I was muted, so everything I just said you couldn't hear. Okay. Hey, everybody, share this. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, go to my Facebook or my Twitter, okay? Share the live stream. Get it into Facebook groups all over America. If you're on Twitter, share the video on Twitter. It's also live on YouTube, but that's not easy to share right now. So just go to Facebook, Twitter, and get it shared. We'll get started soon, and just bear with us. There's a lot going on. We got using new technology, but guess what? We've got the solution. The solution is education. The solution is delivering the truth to people. So right now, as you're listening to this, please invite others. And you don't necessarily have to invite others. Just share with them the live stream that's on Facebook. It's on my Facebook page. Just go there, and you can do it that way. You can see me, Frank. Yes, I'm going to make you a panelist. You're on video, Frank, and they can hear you. So just so you know, actually, your video is not appearing yet. So you got to turn your video on. Yeah. Let me turn your video on. Let me see if I can do it. Okay, see if your video works. Frank, I can't hear you or see you. So at the bottom left-hand corner, there you go. I can see you now. Okay, I still can't hear. You're muted, Frank. You need to unmute yourself. The bottom left-hand corner. Actually, I think I can unmute you. I'll unmute you. You're unmuted. Put your headset on.
Okay. Let me put my coat on.
Okay. We are live streaming on Facebook, everybody. Please share it. Lots of groups. And if you're not a booster yet for this event, you can still make a donation. Send me a message if you want to be a donor, $25, $50, or $100. Somebody even donated more than $100. And everything we raise is going to be split between our two guests, Alex Newman and Frank De Verona. You're going to learn a lot. It's a 1-hour webinar. We've been doing these consistently. And I'm sure that the amount of brain activity you're going to have as this call goes on is going to be incredible. We're going to get started here in 5 minutes, so get prepared. If you're on Facebook, go to my Facebook page, Evan Mulch, share the live stream. If you're on Twitter, go to Twitter, share the live stream there. Let's get people to watch this. America's asleep, and that's because it's been done intentionally. And the only way we're going to win is by getting the truth out. Truth is our only weapon. Education is our only strategy. Repeat with me. Truth is our only weapon. Education is our only strategy. I think I have that right. Alex, shake your head yes if I've got that right. Okay. We like to have some fun. So, you know what? Be ready to laugh a little bit, to giggle. There are a lot of crazy things going on in America, and we don't have to watch the mainstream media tonight. We can do this just you and I and the panelists, and you just share this as much as you can on Facebook, and we'll have a good time tonight, and you're going to get a lot of people involved. I know a lot of you watching this already. You're the one that's involved in your community. Let's get more people involved. By the way, while we're waiting here, there's some good books that you can order from Amazon. These are 2 books that have been written by Frank de Verona. Order them on Amazon if you like, or order them afterwards. They're very thick. You get your money's worth, okay?
$25.
$25 each. I ordered mine last week. This one's about Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, the Kennedy assassination, the Vatican, the New World Order. And this one's about the New World Order and how it threatens America and the world.
Thank you for advertising my books.
You're welcome. I wish I had Alex's book to advertise. Alex, grab one of your books. We'll get it advertised because people have got time right now.
There's Alex's book.
This is the only one I have in reach, and unfortunately, it's very hard to get. I think on Amazon right now it sells for $100, if I'm not mistaken, which is a shame.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the 50 that I have in my closet, I should sell them now.
Are you serious, Evan?
No, I'm joking. I have 50 in my closet.
Oh man,
I should have bought
would love
50
to buy
from you
them.
last time I saw you.
Should have. I know. I should have bought 50 from me last time I saw me. So.
Well, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes.
You can get them on Kindle still for $9.99.
Okay.
And I won't tell anybody if people read bootleg copies. There's PDFs floating around there. Just use your favorite search engine. You'll find something good.
You know, it's funny when you're learning from people who want to teach you the truth, they very rarely go after you if you bootleg their stuff, because the key is getting the truth out, right?
That's right. Yep.
We're up to 17 participants. Keep sharing this on Facebook. Keep letting people know about it. I hope a lot of you, sent out the emails today to let people know about this event. This is a, do you have anything better to do this evening? I mean, we're all locked in our homes, right? Or practically locked in our homes. I guess the weather's really nice in some areas, so we could be enjoying the nice weather. But you know what? We've got a battle in this country, and right now is a good time to get educated. We don't want our neighbors to not know what's going on.
You're getting more participants. I see that.
We're getting we're at 20 right now.
24.
Yeah. And I'm just checking. I know some people are having trouble logging in. Just making sure. Okay. Okay, I think everybody's logged in that wants to log in. We'll get started in 1 minute, everybody. Get your questions ready, because you can always ask your questions in the questions area. If you remember our last webinars, we ask a lot of questions. And I want you to participate. It's not fair that I get to ask all the questions because I ask softball questions. We need difficult questions for our guests so that we can have some fun this evening. And feel free to comment on my Facebook page too, and I can get your question from there. If you're watching this from the live stream, and if you're looks like we have about 9 people that are watching the live stream right now, but you can comment below that, and that's a way for me to see what question you want to ask if you're not logged into the webinar. Okay, let's get started here. Welcome everybody to this evening's webinar. I call them a birchinar. So if you want to find out more information about our birchinars, if you want to get our emails, our texts, go to birchinar.com, B-I-R-C-H-I-N-A-R, birchinar.com. It's like webinar. Now, a lot of you I know are returning guests. Some of you may be new these last 1 hour. And what we do is we bring on top educators in this movement to stop the New World Order. And this is key right now. And I want you to become as educated as possible. I don't want you to stop after this webinar is over with and just take in what you have and stop there. I want you to read Alex's books. I want you to read Frank De Verona's books. And I'd like you to join the John Birch Society too, especially if you live in my part of the country, because I'd love to work with you. So take time during this webinar to learn, and then don't forget, we got to take action. And so we're going to get started here with a short introduction. Actually, before we get started, we're going to wave the flag for some people, for some virtual boosters, okay?
I'll wave mine too.
Wave the flags, okay? For Linda Everett out of Charlotte, $25. Ed Henlin, North Carolina, $25. And Janelle Hamilton out of Georgia, $120.
Wow.
All the Birch boosters, their amounts that are given to us are split amongst the speakers. So $170. If you still want to donate to the speakers, you have time. And anyways, if you check the email that I sent, if you did not get the email, you can message me on Facebook if you want to make a donation. But everything that we get today is donated directly to the speakers. We're going to split it in half, okay? All right. Thanks everybody for joining. We're going to get started with Frank. Let's start with you. And talk a little bit about your background. How did you make it to Florida? What did you live through? And let's keep it to about 5 minutes as far as how long you talk before Alex gets to introduce himself. Okay?
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, Evan. I was born in Cuba. I'm going to be soon 77 years old. And I came to study in the United States when I was 14 years old at a Naval Academy in St. Petersburg called Admiral Farragut Academy. When I graduated, I went to study at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. And in March of 1961, my brother and I dropped out of Georgia Tech, and we enrolled in the Assault Brigade 2506 that were being trained in Guatemala to invade Cuba to try to topple the communist regime in our homeland. And we were trained by the CIA, by Special Forces in Guatemala. But Alex and I wrote a nice article on New American explaining why we lost, so people can refer to that article and see exactly what happened. But anyway, we were betrayed by the Eisenhower administration because they allowed communism to enter Cuba. They had enough information from 3 US ambassadors from Cuba, 1 from Mexico, that sent cable after cable to the State Department saying that Fidel Castro's 26 July movement was totally infiltrated by communists. And that was ignored by the Eisenhower State Department, which was headed by a globalist by the name of John Foster Dulles. His brother, also a globalist, was the head of the CIA, Alan Dulles. But anyway, those were ignored because the State Department had 2 communists there that were there for many years. The Department was infiltrated thoroughly by communists during Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration. There are a bunch of communists, and maybe there's still some there even now. But anyway, so what happened was then they ignored those cables that they came from the US ambassadors from Cuba and the one from Mexico, saying that do not allow Fidel Castro to come to power. He will be an enemy of the United States, and then he will bring communism to Cuba. That was ignored. So then that's what happened. Communism came to Cuba. Then Eisenhower in March of 1960 decided to do regime change, which I was very happy, of course, after he allowed communism to enter the island. But the plan that was devised by the CIA, the Joint Chief of Staff, was completely changed by President Kennedy. That is the book that you show, earlier, where I talk about that. But anyway, so we are trained in Guatemala. We landed in Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, April 17, 1961. Kennedy had changed the landing place from Trinidad, which you had landed, to the Bay of Pigs, which was criminal negligence, dereliction of duty, and high treason, because we could not win there. So that's what happened. I was captured prisoner with my brother, my cousin. One of my cousins died at the Bay of Pigs. He was a pilot. And then we were sentenced to 30 years of hard labor. And I served 2 years in prison, the worst prisons of Cuba. I lost 60 pounds. I got hepatitis, dysentery, all kinds of diseases were brutalized in those prisons in Cuba. Then, of course, I came back to the United States. I returned back, and then I graduated from University of Florida. I have 2 degrees there, one from the University of Miami. I have 3 college degrees. And then I worked basically 36 years in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, which is the 4th largest district in the United States, all the way from social studies teacher to deputy superintendent of schools. I also became an associate professor at Florida International University, which is a state university in Miami. I worked there 7.5 years. So that's basically my background. I've written 26 books, 500 articles. I'm a good friend of Alex Newman and of his parents as well.
So
I'm delighted to be here with Alex. I really admire Alex. He's such a wonderful, intelligent person, he gave conferences and he writes articles. He's a full-time employee of the New American Magazine.
So you've set the bar high, Frank. I don't think Alex is at 20-some books yet. Are you at 20-some books yet?
Not even close. No, I think I'm working on maybe my 5th or my 6th right now, which should be published very soon by Western Islands. It'll be on the deep state. So regular readers of the New American will know a lot of that material, but we basically combined this with a whole bunch of articles we've done and some new material, and we'll be publishing that.
That was our Deep State magazine that Alex was holding here. Now, before we start with Alex, let's wave our flags again, everybody. Okay. Dallas Hamilton is matching Janelle Hamilton, her daughter, with a donation of $120. And then Steve Hoffman, one more time. Steve Hoffman, $25. All right. We're at a total of $240 plus, looks like, so $340 split between the 2 of our guests. Thank you so much, everybody. That helps pay a good honorarium to, incentivize our speakers to be on these webinars. And I think it's unexpected probably to Frank and Alex at this point that so much has been contributed, but you guys really deserve, all the work you put in. You guys are the brains behind the John Birch Society, which I appreciate because my job is just to be loud and obnoxious, so anyways, go ahead, Alex.
Well, thank you guys. I've been on a few of these now, so I think probably, and I came through South Carolina thanks to Evan, who organized some wonderful speaking events there. I had the privilege to meet a lot of you folks, and I tell you, it was such an incredible honor. I am, for those who don't know me, I'm a freelance writer for the New American Magazine and write for a lot of different other publications. I wear like 57 different hats, most of them dumb, but it's a lot of fun, and I very much appreciate my good friend Frank and my good friend Evan. These are some incredible patriots who are doing so much to save the country. And I know a lot of the people on this webinar are too. And so are the Birchinar. And by the way, we did not coordinate the American flag waving thing, by the way. I saw Evan waving one and I said, hey, I have one too. So it just worked out
that way. It's a Birch thing. You got to have your flag next to your computer, right? We do this during the day. Whenever you get a new member, I stand beside my computer after a new member joins, just wave my flag for a little bit, knowing Americanism's coming back.
Amen. Yeah, and so I met Frank. He and I both serve as on the board of directors of an organization called Bear Witness, and that's how I met Frank de Barona. We had a conference, and I got to know him, and actually he became one of my heroes. He had the courage to invade Cuba at 17 years old. I think, most of our 17-year-olds are sitting in the basement and they're mad because, mom makes them clean their room. Well, Frank actually put his life on the line to do something meaningful, to preserve freedom and to fight for his country. And so I just have more respect for Frank than I can possibly put in words. It's an honor to be here, and Evan as well. The people who work for the John Birch Society, Evan probably won't tell you this, but it's an enormous sacrifice. They don't get paid a lot. They're overworked. I hear that's the second hardest job in the entire world. And for those of you who don't know what the hardest job in the entire world that is being the wife of a field coordinator at the John Birch Society.
That's truth. That's truth.
Yeah, and I bet Evan's wife can tell you that, right? I've met a lot of the guys who are out there doing the hard work in the trenches, the field coordinators, incredible human beings. You really can tell the caliber of the organization when you meet these guys, and then you meet their wives who sacrifice so much to make sure their children are doing well, to make sure their husbands are supported and can do what they need to do to save the country. So it's an honor to be with you, gentlemen, and all of you on the call on the webinar, Birchinar. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Well, let's get started on a serious subject. We saw it in Cuba. the Soviet strategy was used to take over Cuba. Are we seeing it in America today? Frank, would you be the first one to answer that question?
Sure, absolutely. Our nation really is at great risk. The Communist Party has infiltrated our unions. They are now, they're headed by communists. All of our AFL-CIO, the Service Employee International Union, all of the biggest unions in the United States are really controlled by communists. We have over 100 communists who are serving in the Congress of the United States, beginning with Bernie Sanders, of course, the biggest communist of all, AOL, the Squad, etc. They've also infiltrated our colleges and universities. I work in one right here in Miami, Florida International University, that was really had a lot of Marxist and extreme leftist professors, particularly in the College of Education, where I worked, and especially in the social sciences. That's where they really congregate. In fact, one of our college professors at Florida International University was working for Cuban intelligence together with his wife, and he is in prison right now for working with Cuban intelligence. So our universities are infiltrated, the unions are infiltrated, Congress is infiltrated, the socialist mainstream media is thoroughly infiltrated, and even worse, the Democratic Party is no longer what it used to be, a center-left party. It is now a completely Marxist party, pro-Muslim Brotherhood party, and destructive to our nation. So that's why we're so at risk at the moment.
Alex Newman, do you agree with Frank?
I do agree with Frank. I agree with Frank 100%. And, you know, a lot of the same things that we saw in terms of the takeover of Cuba by communists, we're actually seeing again. And in many cases, it's the very same players who were responsible, literally, right? I'll give you an example. The New York Times, I call it the New York Slimes, basically the mouthpiece for the Council on Foreign Relations, unofficial mouthpiece. Their official mouthpiece is the magazine Foreign Affairs. But it was the New York Slimes that played a crucial role in pumping out the propaganda that even made it possible for the communist enslavement of Cuba. You know, most of us probably weren't around at that time. Frank was, and I'm sure some of the people on this call were. Most of us were not. But the New York Slimes, in particular, Herbert Matthews, was promoting Fidel Castro as some sort of freedom fighter. He was apparently the George Washington of Cuba. And we've seen the same thing from the New York Times over and over again in the Soviet Union. It was, of course, Walter Duranty who covered up the Soviet genocide of the Ukrainian people through mass starvation, 10 million people murdered. We have seen in South Africa, same exact thing, promoting the ANC, a communist organization completely run by Communist Party operatives from top to bottom, as a reform organization, a moderate organization, a freedom fighting organization. So the exact same propagandists who enabled the communist enslavement of Cuba, of South Africa, and of so many other nations, they're doing the same thing now to America. And they're using the same tactics. The Democrats are rational, wonderful, freedom fighting, democracy loving, you know, pick your stupid term that the New York Slimes uses. Meanwhile, anybody who opposes this is a reactionary, an authoritarian, a right-wing extremist, a conspiracy theorist, you know, pick your term. Same tactics again, foment division, deceive the people. We're seeing it again. And I think even more, you know, the parallels with Cuba, I think are clear, but I think even more parallel is what happened in South Africa. And this is, I used to live in South Africa. It's a subject that I've studied very extensively. They used very, very similar strategies in terms of exploiting and fomenting racial hatred. They want people to hate each other based on their skin color, based on whatever, because communists thrive on division and hatred and division and people arguing with each other instead of looking at the real problem. So I would argue that definitely the United States is in danger, very similar to what we saw in so many communist revolutions. And I think there's an even bigger danger here, and that is that Americans are so naive and think that that we're immune to that kind of thing. You know, at least in other nations, people recognize the South Africans, many of them, the Zulu people, the Afrikaner people, they recognized what was happening and they fought back. In America, unfortunately, aside from the John Birch Society, there's not a lot of organized resistance using the truth to expose these people. So we're in great danger. And I'll add one more thing that was just really interesting. And I mentioned this when Frank and I did the JBS National Council dinner recently in Orlando. the head of Castro's Revolutionary Air Force. His last name was Diaz Lenz. He defected from Cuba. He flew his one of his military aircraft over to the United States, and he landed. He got involved in the John Birch Society. And one of the things he said was that if there had been a single chapter of the John Birch Society in Havana, the communists never would have succeeded in taking over that island. So, you know, if you want to understand how effective the methods, the tactics, the strategies of the John Birch Society are, recognized that a senior official from Castro's Gulag Island defected and said one chapter of the JBS would have been able to hold this back. So that's how influential you guys are, often without even realizing it. You know, the media likes to demonize you. You guys are on the front lines of protecting this nation from slavery. Thank you. I salute you, and God bless you.
Let's get our flags out again.
Woohoo!
Tim Martin, $50. Thank you, Tim. I guess I was holding up my flag too high. He actually wrote in here, he's challenging a man named Dave to make a contribution. And I don't know who Dave is, but Dave, if you're on here, he's challenging you to match him. So we're now at 390. Earlier I said 375, and I was off. I was a little bit over, but now we're at 390 with all the donations. So thank you, everybody. Frank, you had shared an interesting article with me earlier today. And do you want to talk about that article with people to kind of, I think it's new news. Anyways, go ahead, Frank.
Yes, this article that I wrote and I send you, maybe you can send it to the rest of the people later. I call it The Communist Plan to Conquer America. And basically, there are many communist organizations, Maoists, you know, working with communist China, which is our biggest enemy. And they are flipping state by state so that the Democrats can win and the Republican Party can be a minority party forever. And once they accomplish that, then they will establish a communist dictatorship. And I cite a lady here by the name of Tram Nguyen, who was born in Vietnam. When she was 5 years old, she came to live here. She's now a state representative from Massachusetts. But before that, for 12 years, she was a coordinator of a group called the New Virginia movement. And she talks about how it took her 12 years of working very hard to flip Virginia to a democratic state. But I want to mention something that is very important here. There's a man, I wrote this in the article, a Scottish professor from Edinburgh University who lived in the 18th century, and he wrote something very, very revealing. I'll read it quickly here. He said, a democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for candidates promising the most benefits on the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy and always is followed by a dictatorship. That's exactly what's happening to us now with this coronavirus that was genocide unleashed by China and used by the deep state and the Democratic Party to bankrupt the United States. We need to open all of the states. I know that John Birch Society has worked very hard everywhere, trying to open every state. I'm very happy that our governor met with the president today, and he's making plans to open Florida. We never should have shut down the United States. This virus is just like a flu. We have had 57,000 people died. We have years where the flu has actually killed 61,000 people. There were people like me that needed to stay home because I have immune-related problems, but the young people are healthy. In fact, right here in Miami-Dade County, they did a study and 200,000 people got the virus, and we only had about 200 people dying. So this virus is killing very few people, and it was a mistake for our nation. In fact, Sweden, I know Alex lived in Sweden for many years. Sweden never shut down the country, and they're doing very well. And but anyway, the danger that we have now is that we're spending I think $4 trillion by the federal government, and also the banking cartel that is known as the Federal Reserve System is spending like another $4 trillion. That's going to devalue our currency. It's going to create inflation. And now you have Nancy Pelosi saying on Monday that she wants to send money to every person in the United States, like a minimum income or whatever. They're taking advantage of this crisis. I think you were interviewed today by a lady in the radio. I saw your interview, and she said COVID, it's the same thing as communism. And I believe she was absolutely right. This was an attack done by China upon the United States to destroy the Trump economy that we're doing so well, and to destroy our economy, put 26 million people unemployed, and therefore make the case for defeating Donald Trump in November 2020 and elected a half-demented person like Joe Biden, who will probably have an African-American woman as vice president, maybe Kamala Harris, maybe Michelle Obama. And that is a great danger that we will forever lose our nation if that were to happen. So that was an attack by China. They knew about the virus. They hid the information about the virus. They shut down the Hubei province where the virus started. They couldn't leave that province to the rest of China, yet they allow thousands of Chinese from the Hubei province to come to the United States and Europe and other places to spread the virus. This was a direct attack by China, and we need, after this crisis is over, we need to hold China accountable. We need to maybe not pay the debt that we owe to them at all, and we need to take strong measures against China, or otherwise we will someday be conquered by China.
Okay, question from Ron Hammond out of Georgia. Is there much difference between Fidel and Raul Castro?
No, there's no difference at all. Both of them were communists. And once Fidel died, the brother took over. And if he dies, his son will take over. Hopefully not. Hopefully that won't happen, but that Cuba is a little bit like North Korea. You know, one dies and then the son takes over, and then the grandson takes over. And maybe he's now dead, the dictator of Korea. I hope he's dead so he can join Fidel Castro in hell.
Well, we got to bring our flags back out. We have a donation from Karen Bracken for $25. And we got to wait for Alex.
Your flag, Alex.
25. And then Bill Behan, $100. Longtime member of the John Birch Society. 100. Yeah, we'll really wave the flag. We're at 490 right now. And I'm not using a calculator, so I hope I'm right, but I'm doing my best to add these. Anyways, we'll keep going here. If you want to donate, you've still got time to donate to this. Go to scspeakers.org. SC Speakers, like South Carolina Speakers.org. Go to the support link at the top right hand of the page. So if you're watching this on Facebook right now, you go to scspeakers.org, go to the top right hand corner, hit support, and make a donation there. Facebook comment if you make a donation so that I know it came in. Oh, another donation came in, $25 from David Gunter. Thank you. So that was the match that Tim Martin had hoped his friend would make a donation. So Dave, thank you so much. We'll keep going here. Having some fun. Okay, so Alex, were you in agreement with what Frank said about Raul Castro? And do you think it's China that's behind this?
Sorry, I muted myself. But yes, absolutely 100%. You know, the Castro brothers are communist mass murderers, and, you know, the differences between them are trivial at best. And about China, you know, I think crucial to understanding China is understanding the revelations that we got in two books actually by Anatoly Golitsyn. And if I'm not mistaken, I have them right behind me. I do. It's right there. I'll grab it down next time I have an opportunity. It's New Lies for the Old is one of them. So Anatoly Golitsyn was a very, very high-ranking operative within the KGB. He worked in Department D, which was in charge of disinformation operations. And he defected to the Western world. And in the early 1980s, he dropped these bombshells. Basically, he exposed these very, very long-range deception plans that the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, had formulated. going into the 60s and into the 70s. There was a few of these that were absolutely crucial. One of them was this idea that communist China and communist Russia, Soviet Union, were somehow at odds with each other. And, you know, the globalists in the United States, the members of the Council on Foreign Relations, they knew perfectly well that this was a fraud. But it provided them a very important opportunity to build up and normalize relations with communist China under the guise of trying to drive a wedge between the Chinese and the Russians and the Soviets. They said, oh, well, we'll build up China and they don't like Russia. And so maybe they'll, you know, argue with each other and that'll I mean, it was self-evidently ludicrous. And of course, it was a disinformation operation, which anybody with two brain cells to rub together should have been able to figure out. Anatoly Golitsyn actually spilled the beans on that. And even more importantly, he talked about in this book, and remember, this book was written almost, in fact, it was written even before it was published. These were originally disclosures that he made to the Central Intelligence Agency, which unfortunately has been packed with communists going all the way back to when it was the Office of Strategic Services during World War II. In fact, they bragged that they filled the ranks with communists. But be that as it may, we have this situation where the disinformation department decided, hey, it would be useful to our purposes. You know, the West is never going to submit to global Soviet tyranny, right? They would rather be dead than red, as the old cliche goes. So we need to come up with a new plan. And so Anatoly Golitsyn made these revelations. Early 1980s, these books were published. There's the Perestroika Deception and New Lies for the Old. Again, if you haven't read these books, if you're not familiar with these, I highly encourage you to at least get up to speed. If you don't actually go out and buy the books and read them, could be a little bit dry at times, at least get yourself up to speed on these things. What he revealed was a long-range plan to have a phony collapse of the Soviet Union. And he actually predicted step by step what they were going to do. He said first we'd have a liberalization in Poland. We'd have a liberalization in Czechoslovakia. And he even named some of the names, right? Lech Walesa was one of the people he pointed to and said, this guy is a communist agent and he's going to masquerade as the leader of the freedom movement. So they'll have freedom in Poland and it'll be phony freedom. Well, a couple years ago, we covered in the New American, Soviet archive documents revealed that Lech Walesa was actually a Soviet agent. His code name was Bolek, and he was working for the Soviets all the while he was supposedly leading the anti-Soviet, anti-communist rebellion. So these people are very smart. After Poland and Czechoslovakia, he talked about there might even bringing down the Berlin Wall, that the communists might actually even take down the Berlin Wall to prove to the West that communism was over. There was nothing to fear anymore. We can all get back to celebrating and don't worry about the threat of communism. And finally, and I should point out here just to establish this man's credibility, he made something like 205 very specific predictions in these two books about what was going to happen. You know, collapse of the Berlin Wall, liberalization, phony collapse of the Soviet Union. The last I looked, it was about 198 of those specific predictions had come to pass. So he's got an extremely good track record. And what he said was, once the time is right, once they have sufficiently demoralized and undermined the Western world's ability and willingness to resist global communist slavery, they would take an opportunity and have what he described as another October surprise, where you would have a global communist revolution and the world would find itself under the tyranny of the Soviet communists, the Chinese communists, and of course their sponsors, which if you read another book that I have behind me, and I highly recommend that you do, it is by a gentleman called Anthony Sutton. He was a historian at Stanford University. It's called Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. If you do your research, what you'll find is that many of these communist leaders were actually backed by the world's premier pseudo-capitalists, the Rockefellers, the mega bankers, the Morgans, the Schiffs, and on and on. Documentation is irrefutable. So they have very serious plans for communist China in terms of shaping the new world order. I have an article that I did that I would very much like to recommend. If you're a regular reader of the New American, you've already seen this, but it was a cover story in the New American. It appeared in 2015. And you know, now if you turn on the fake news, they say, "Oh my goodness, Trump is handing over the United Nations to China. Oh my goodness, what a bad president." Well, if you read this article, you'll see this was the plan all along. Rockefeller was involved with it. Soros thinks communist China ought to run the new world order. They have very, very well-developed plans to have the communist Chinese be the tip of the spear in this move to crush freedom around the world. Coronavirus is very, very clearly a part of that. And we need to understand these things because they prey on our ignorance. They prey on our confusion. Nobody knows what's going on. People are watching CNN getting confused. People are watching MSNBC. No clue what's happening in the real world. It is only by understanding the enemy and understanding ourselves that we'll be able to successfully resist.
Okay, I've got some good news for everybody. Ben and Berkeley Hill just donated $50.
Whoa. Sweet.
Mike Lower donated $50 as well. We are at $615.
Oh my goodness, I might take the rest of the week off.
Hey, only if you take it off to write a couple articles for us, okay? That's what you got to do.
Evan,
Okay.
I'd like to add something to what Alex was mentioning. We have some globalist by the name of Bill Gates, who is now was interviewed recently, and he was praising the way China handled the Wuhan virus and how the United States handled it so poorly. He actually works with China. He has a branch of the Bill Gates Melinda Foundation in Beijing. He's an outright communist and a globalist as well. And then we also have to mention that the infiltration has also gone to the churches. We unfortunately have Pope Francis, who is a proponent of the Marxist theology liberation of the Catholic Church. But more than that, he's a globalist. When they unveiled Agenda 2030 at the United Nations, the keynote speaker was none other than Pope Francis. And the Vatican is totally and completely controlled by communists. And I say that with great sadness because I am a practicing Catholic. I take communion, I go to church regularly with my wife. And I'm even related to an anti-communist cardinal that we had in Cuba by the name of Manuel Arteaga. And I have a Franciscan missionary who is my cousin and a nun. So I am related to active people in the Catholic Church. But it's very sad that the Vatican was thoroughly infiltrated over many years, not just the Catholic Church. There have been other churches infiltrated as well, because that has communist work. They infiltrate everything, the press, the Congress, the political parties, the unions, and the churches as well. So that's why we have such a great danger. But then you also have somebody like Michael Bloomberg, who has businesses in China. Bloomberg News doesn't write anything against China. They follow Chinese law. And he's another globalist of the New World Order. And he, of course, ran for president on the Democratic Party. But unfortunately, the Democratic Party, as I mentioned before, is thoroughly infiltrated. And now the plan is to take over state by state, the southern states. They're doing it, first of all, by allowing former felons to vote. That's why how they did it in Virginia with Terry McLaughlin, who worked for Bill Clinton. Here's his picture here. I don't know if you can see it. There's a picture of him there. He was governor of Virginia. He worked in the Bill Clinton campaign, Hillary Clinton campaign, and he, of course, he led all the former felons to vote in Virginia. And they're not going to vote for the Republican Party because it's a law and order party. They're all going to vote for the Democrats that are promising them everything for free, slavery reparations, free colleges, cancel your debts, Green New Deal, et cetera, et cetera. And now they are targeting Florida. Unfortunately, George Soros gave a lot of money when we had Amendment 4 that was up for a vote. And then it passed. And now, of course, we have 1.4 million former felons, including 100,000 African Americans that are trying to vote in the next election. And if we lose Florida, President Trump will lose his re-election. So we are in mortal danger. And the way they're going to do it is by allowing the former felons to vote. In Kentucky, they also elected a Democratic governor in December of last year, Andy Beshear, and he did an executive order to allow 104 former felons to vote. He didn't even have to go to legislature. He did it by executive action. So that is the plan, to get the former felons to vote, and also to get low information voters enrolled to vote, naive young people who have been brainwashed in our schools, public schools and universities. So that is the work that we have to do. Is very hard.
Okay.
to make the United States continue to be a constitutional republic.
We got a lot of questions here, so I've got to start. We got to start getting through these questions. Okay. There's a lot of them. We have 65, at least 65 people watching live right now. 55 who are in this webinar. So, okay, some of these may be repeat questions. So if it's a repeat question, we'll keep going with it. But Michael Orr asked, do you see any parallels throughout history that compare with the COVID-19 crisis where people have given up their liberty for safety and lost their freedom, more specifically over health safety? That's his question. And I think, Alex, you may have answered this with you know, what you talked about when you talked about South Africa. But here's the question again. Do you see any parallels throughout history that compare with this COVID-19 crisis where people have given up their liberty for safety and lost their freedom, more specifically over health safety? Frank, do you want to give a minute answer to that?
Well, over health safety, I'm not so sure, but after 9/11, we gave a lot of our freedom as well, and that's a way to eliminate freedom. You know, like using this virus, they have trampled the Constitution in many states and also in mayors of cities, and of course, this was planned. This was not done accidentally, but yes, communists will take advantage of any crisis to continue advancing in their diabolical objectives to destroy our nation here.
Okay, Alex, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, in a recent webinar, somebody actually talked about how Nazis exploited fears about tuberculosis to round up people. But, you know, it's not just health concerns. And I think we've even seen this in America. You know, they have used hysteria about diseases to mandate all sorts of infringements on our individual liberty that would be unthinkable to a people that was courageous and was really passionate about individual liberty. Vaccine mandates are an obvious one, and you know, we can get into, you know, the science and all that. I've researched it very extensively, but regardless of your position on vaccines, as free people ought to have the right to choose what sort of medical treatments, what sort of vaccinations, what sort of medicines they would like to take. If they want to take them, they're very welcome to. If they don't, then they don't have to. And yet in this country, we have now many, many decades of government enforced vaccinations. Now, you know, I think there is a time and a place for government restrictions in response to health concerns. And I think quarantines have been abused in the past, but there's also a time and a place for quarantines. I mean, you know, hypothetically, and I don't think coronavirus meets these criteria, but hypothetically, if we had a very, very deadly virus that was spreading through the population, that was threatening to kill and maim an enormous segment of the population, it would be, I think, completely legitimate for the government to expect the sick people to remain in quarantine. You know, that is a restriction on individual liberty, but I think it's a justified one. But to the broader point, governments creating and exploiting the fears of the population to steal liberty, I mean, this is pretty much goes back to the dawn of human history. Whenever the government wants to steal some freedom from you, they have to concoct a fear campaign to go with it. So if they want to spy on everybody, they'll say, oh, there's terrorists out there just waiting to get you, or, you know, there's bad guys and they're going to come get you. If they want to censor the internet, they have to say, oh, there's hate speech out there that's radicalizing people, and, you know, then horrible things are going to happen. If they want to take your guns, they have to come up with a fear campaign. Oh my goodness, someone's going to kill themselves, or someone's going to do a mass shooting. So what do we see? Constant efforts to drum up the fear. And so I think this tactic of using and exploiting fears to take away liberty, it's as old as tyrants themselves. It goes back thousands of years, and almost in every case where we see serious attacks on liberty, it revolves around a fear campaign. And sometimes they're taking, you know, legitimate issues and hyping them all out of proportion. Sometimes they're just making them up out of whole cloth. Sometimes they just do a false flag attack to get everybody paranoid, but the tactics are always the same. You should be scared and you should give up liberty. Thanks.
Here's the next question from Karen Bracken. We are facing food shortage. We are being told chickens are being killed, vegetable crops plowed under, calves being aborted, and grocery shelves are empty of meat. Representative Massey is trying to resolve this crisis. Most Americans believe the pandemic is fake in order to destroy this country. What do you think? Frank, do you want to be first on that? And please limit to 2 minutes here, because we've got a lot of questions.
Oh, absolutely. This pandemic is absolutely fake. And yes, a lot of, we could be facing a shortage of meat and pork. Uh, at least that's been reported. But yes, it is a totally fake thing. I just want to mention something about Anthony Fauci, who unfortunately Trump has made him like, you know, like a great hero. When Obama was president, Fauci gave $2.3 million to the virus laboratory in Wuhan. $2.3 million. Also, Canada contributed money as well. And they were doing research on bats. So how could we give money to that lab? Fauci also signed a memorandum of understanding with the communist Dr. Tedros from Ethiopia, the head of the, of course, the WHO, World Health Organization. So he's a traitor, and he also has worked closely his entire life with Bill Gates. So this is these are the people that supposedly are helping us. And what is Fauci saying? What are Democrats saying? We have to keep the economy shut down even longer. Because what do they want to do? They want to destroy our economy with the excuse of the virus so that they can re-elect Joe Biden in the fall.
Okay, Jack, same question.
Yeah. You know, I think there is a virus, but I think the seriousness of it has been blown all out of proportion. And, you know, I do think that it's very likely that we're dealing with a bioweapon developed in a Chinese military laboratory in Wuhan. From what I've been able to determine in my many conversations with doctors, we've interviewed a whole bunch. You can go to YouTube at the New Americans channel. You can see my interview with Dr. Graves there, who's advising the White House. You can see our interview with Dr. Shiva. It does seem to me like the fear mongering has been blown all out of proportion. It seems to me also like they're massively overinflating the body counts. I know many people who work in hospitals. They say, hey, the hospital's dead as a doornail. They're laying people off. They're furloughing us because there's nobody here. Everybody canceled all their appointments. Nobody's coming in. So I think, you know, there may be some underlying seriousness to this disease, but it's been blown way out of proportion.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We are at $615 in funds raised. Now, a lot of you have texted me to let me know you are making that donation. If you have not made that donation and you've told us you're going to make that donation, please go to scspeakers.org and make that donation in the top right-hand corner. You can hit the support us. Now, somebody messaged me and they said they couldn't make the donation they wanted to make on that website. The PayPal address is paypal.me/scspeakers. Again, that's paypal.me/scspeakers. And if you need an email address, it's contact@scspeakersbureau.org. That's contact@scspeakersbureau.org. So if you cannot make a donation on the website for the amount you want, please make it on PayPal. We'll go on to the next question here. Alex, this is from Ron Hammond in Georgia. Alex, some claim that the coronavirus came from China to defeat Trump, but why would other countries shut down their economies? Are they so invested? Are they this invested in defeating Trump?
Well, I think it's a very real possibility that the Communist Chinese did deliberately release this, maybe not only for the purpose of defeating Trump. And I think it's crucial to understand. I shared a link earlier about how the Communist Chinese are inseparable. They're like this with the deep state globalists in the United States. So I don't think it's necessarily all geared toward defeating Trump, but I think it may be a very real motivation. Why would other countries play along? Well, for one, I think there's a lot of ignorance. I think a lot of the leaders, a lot of the members of parliament of other European countries, you know, they don't know more than what's on the news. They know what an average person knows, right? They might have an advisor who's maybe smart, but they don't have access to any inside information. They've been, and I think the case is the same with a lot of our Republican governors. Why did a lot of them stampede into this? Well, the peer pressure, the hysteria from the news, the political pressure. Same thing. I don't think every Republican governor that signed these stay-at-home orders is necessarily part of the deep state or even necessarily wants to advance its agenda. But you know, when you're in this environment of panic and your constituents are freaking out and your advisors are freaking out and your wife is freaking out, you know, it's very easy to get sucked up into that. And, you know, it's going to take a long time to sort out the truth here. We may never sort it out. Kind of like the JFK assassination, right? Nobody really knows exactly what happened. There's 1,000 different theories. So I think that's kind of what we're dealing with. Okay,
another flag wave for a JBS member, Joseph Searing out of South Carolina, $20. At a total of $635. I would have never dreamed to have this much in donations. That's incredible, everybody. And this goes to such a good cause because Frank and Alex donate so much of their time to the cause, and you know, a lot of it goes at no charge, you know, because they are just patriots. And that's the problem a lot of us run into, is we're so patriotic for this country, wanting to save it. I shouldn't say it's a problem. It's a good thing to have. You want people like us in the country, but you spend a lot of time trying to save it and you forgo better ways of making an income in order to save the country. But anyways, it's well worth it if we get to keep the republic, in my opinion. Okay, we'll keep going here. Tim Martin has a question. Can you talk about the history of communism in public schools and how taking this opportunity to test test drive homeschooling? Alex, that's sort of a question for you, right? So that's,
well, it
anyways.
is, but also Frank too. Frank has an incredible background in education. He actually, what were you, the assistant superintendent of the Miami-Dade public school system, Frank? So I'll start off on that, and then I'll hand it over to Frank, because Frank is very knowledgeable in this as well. If you're not a regular subscriber to the New American or a regular member of the John Birch Society, get a copy of this. Go over to thenewamerican.com/rescuing our children. You see the title here, Rescuing Our Children. This will give the whole background. It's a very easy to read format. You can share it with your pastor. You can share it with your neighbor. Also, I've been doing a series of columns on this very subject at the Epoch Times. I've done 15 parts. And so the history of communism and education, they're inseparable. Okay, the very first guy, other than Plato, who was a totalitarian as well, but the very first guy to really propose government takeover of education was a guy called Robert Owen. He was a communist even before Karl Marx. He set up a communist commune in Indiana called New Harmony. It was a total failure. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely idiotic. It went bust after 2 years because communism is stupid. Well, this guy came up with the completely wrong idea that the reason why it didn't work is because the government hadn't brainwashed all the children starting when they were very young. So he wrote some essays saying that the government should take over education. Prussian ambassador got a hold of these essays, gave them to the ruler of Prussia, the king of Prussia, the prince of Prussia, and the prince said, hey, that's a great idea. Interior minister, build us a government school system. So he did. It was a statist school system. Parents were required to hand over their children. And about 50 years later, about 40 years later, this crazy system was imported to Massachusetts by Horace Mann, who rejected God, who rejected the Bible, who rejected individual liberty. He was an early humanist. Then you keep going, and you come to John Dewey, an actual communist, right? And if you ask anybody with an education degree in this country, anybody who has a bachelor's or a doctorate degree in education, they say, oh yeah, John Dewey, he was the founding father of our public school system. And he was a communist. He went to the Soviet Union during Lenin, and he loved what they were doing. You can read his essays in Mother Jones, talking about how wonderful this government school system was because it was indoctrinating all the children into a, quote, collectivistic mentality. So the people who actually created our public school system in America were communists in the very true sense of the term. This isn't just hyperbole. They were actual communists. And, they couldn't go from where we were back then to where they wanted to be overnight. They recognized, John Dewey himself said, that this has to be a slow process. If people figure out what we're doing, there's going to be a violent reaction. But now we're starting to see the culmination of that, where they're openly indoctrinating our children into communism, into the hatred of Christianity, into the hatred of our constitutional form of government. It is going to destroy us if we're not careful. And this shutdown is an absolutely perfect time for us to be rescuing our children from the public school system. Our new cover story, you guys, if you're regular subscribers to this, you'll be getting it probably this week. Evan might already have a copy because he is a coordinator. Maybe he doesn't.
Well, I'm Alex, for talking about the New American Magazine. Guess what you get? A free copy of the New American Magazine.
Woohoo! So there we go. This article right here deals with exactly that subject. This shutdown, we have 55 million children who are at home right now, learning with their parents. Unfortunately, a lot of them are doing government school at home. What we're urging parents to do is stop doing government school at home, start trying out real homeschooling, and hopefully, if and when things get back to normal, millions of additional families will be joining the homeschool movement.
Frank, same question. Do you want to talk about the homeschool movement and what it means to America to really make that strong?
I think it's very important. Alex himself is educating all his kids at home with the help of his wife. When I was teaching years ago at Miami Springs High School, we were using this book. It was required in the state of Florida to teach about communism versus Americanism. And this was a great book that I used when I was a government teacher, teaching economics and government for seniors at Miami Springs High School in Miami. Unfortunately, this is no longer being used. So we're graduating students have no idea what communism is all about. Common Core, that was pushed by Barack Obama. It was a totally communist takeover of the schools. We wouldn't be reading the speeches of Mandela, no longer teaching what we used to teach in English literature. And then they took advantage of the crisis that we had back then, a major crisis, to force many of the states to adopt Common Core, or otherwise they wouldn't receive any money from the Department of Education. So that was pushed by Obama. Another book that was written by Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States, it sold 2 million copies in Facebook. That book was used at Florida International University when I was a professor there to teach future social studies teachers. When I arrived at FIU, they recommended me I use that book. When I read it, I found out that that book was written by an anarchist and economist who presented a distorted version of our history, of US history. And now we have, for the brightest students in the nation, the ones that are taking advanced placement US history, that curriculum has totally changed, and it is a pro-communist, completely curriculum, which are being taught to our brightest students who are taking advanced placement US history, that when they finish, they could even get 6 credits at the college level if they pass the AP exam. Well, that was done by the head of the Princeton, who also worked on the English part of Common Core. He pushed that. So this is how they're using the public schools to teach Marxism, unfortunately, and certainly is true at the university level as well.
Okay, we have a donor that just put in another donation, so grab your flags. $50 for Lucy Lane. She donated $50, Lucy Lansky. And so that brings our total to $685 altogether. That is awesome. This is how we make Americanism happen, is we put our effort behind it, and Patriots put in a little bit of money, and we can keep these events going on. And anyways, thank you so much, all of you that have been so generous. Nobody is getting taxed that is on this webinar, believe it or not. I'm not going to tax anybody. I'm not going to value your property and ask for a specific amount from your property. This is all voluntary, and if you want to keep these going, that's you know, this is how we become great Americans, is that we start being generous again for the causes that are going to save our republic. And for a lot of people, that's joining the John Birch Society, that's participating in the John Birch Society with your time, talent, or treasure, or all three. Some people do time, talent, and treasure. They do all three to help the John Birch Society. And I know Frank and Alex are both in that category of people who donate everything they can to help the John Birch Society out. And anyways, we've got one more question I'm going to ask, and then we're going to move on to the conclusion of this. And so Larry McMillan has a question. What about the former Iron Curtain states, particularly Hungary and Poland? Is there seemingly freedom and conservatism real or phony? How do they fit in to Golitsyn's narrative? This may have been a question for Alex. Alex, I'll let you go first on this.
Thank you for the question. And it's actually a question that I have asked myself. And so a couple of years ago, we were in Europe already. We're trying to sell our house. My wife is from there. That's how we got stuck there, not by choice, obviously. And so we took a road trip. We couldn't stay in Sweden for more than 3 months at a time. We took a road trip right down through Eastern Europe, and I went to go ask people. And so I actually, Hungary is a good example. I had heard a lot of great things about the Orban government and what they were doing in terms of trying to stop the migration, stop the globalism, stop the United Nations, stop the European Union. And so I called them up and said, hey guys, I need to talk to one of your senior people because I need to know what's going on. And we in America need to know what's going on. Well, they were very gracious to us. If you're interested, I will actually find a way to pull it up right now so I can share the link. But I had the opportunity to interview the Secretary of State over there. His name was Zoltan Kovacs, and you can listen for yourself and come to your own conclusions. I think they may have miscalculated in some of these countries. I do believe that the resistance to globalism and the open borders and the socialism and the communism and the New World Order is very real in Hungary. One of the ways I know this is because the entire world media is out there trying to paint them as if they were some sort of fascistic, demon dictators, when in fact what they've done is increase the amount of liberty, decrease taxes, control the borders. They allow total free speech. They are winning re-election by massive margins. Their last election, they won by over 2/3 of the vote. And so I think in Hungary, it's very real. In Poland, I think there's a mix of things. I think even within the ruling party, which is supposedly very conservative, there are a lot of nefarious actors. And I think the situation varies in country by country. If we're almost out of time, so I won't spend more time, but I did go through all these countries. We drove through the former Yugoslavia, interviewed people all up and down government, people down on the street, people in the think tanks, got a lot of information on this. Some of it we published in the New American, some of it not. And while Frank addresses this, if he'd like to, I will find the video. We did 25-minute interview of the Secretary of State of Hungary, and you can decide for yourself.
Frank, go ahead. We have 4 minutes left, so 2 minutes if you would.
Yes, well, I agree with everything Alex has said. I've been to Hungary myself. I admire Prime Minister Orban. He's trying to do away with George Soros University that he tried to establish in Hungary. And he had denounced the European Union as a globalist organization. And I think he's trying to do what's right for his country by shutting the borders, not allowing Muslims to enter there. I think Poland is trying to do the same thing. They don't want, Poland is basically a Catholic nation, and they don't want any Muslims to enter there, unlike Europe. They made a terrible mistake allowing more than 1.5 million Muslims to enter Europe, particularly in Germany and in Sweden and in other places as well. So yes, I agree with everything Alex has said about Hungary, especially. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys for taking part in this webinar. Alex, you've been doing every Tuesday for the past 3 weeks, and this is just awesome to have you here. I hope you're back with us next Tuesday. This has been a generous amount of your time to be able to come on. I don't have to have you fly on a plane, which is nice, right? Frank, you probably appreciate that too. You can stay at home. And anyways, everybody who has donated, you've made my evening. You've made my week already. I don't even have to work the rest of the week because I'm just so pleased with what you've done. Okay, so we're just grab your flags. You don't have to wave them, just hold them up. So to all of you who supported Americanism this evening by donating to this is just fantastic. This is how we're going to win is through little donations. Linda Everett, Janelle Hamilton, Ed Hanlon, Steve Hoffman, Dallas Hamilton, Tim Martin, Kerry Bracken, Bill Behan, Dave Gunter, Ben and Berkeley Hill, Mike Lower, Joseph Sering, Lucy Lansky. And there may be a couple of you I've left out because the way we get our donations, it's hard to see everybody's name as they come in. So text me. I've left my text number. So if you did make a donation, let me know. But there will be some unsung heroes, I think, that won't get their names announced that made a donation. Oh, Theo Weaver, $25. Wave for Theo Weaver, $25. That's a new name here. And then did we announce? Well, that looks like it's that looks like that's it. So anyways, we're going to do another webinar Thursday evening, same time. If you want to get our text alerts or email alerts, go to birchinar.com, birchinar.com, birchinar.com. And whenever we send emails out, make sure to forward those emails to your friends. Make sure to get your friends to sign up for our text alerts. We're going to be doing these every Tuesday evening, every Thursday evening. When people donate, we split it amongst the speakers that are speaking. On this Thursday, we have Lucretia Hughes. She's out of Georgia. We also have Zoe Warren out of South Carolina. Both are members of the John Birch Society. Both have a great, they're just so patriotic. They are in it to win it. And that's what we need, are people on these webinars that are showing people the solutions on how we're going to win. Alex writes books. Frank writes books. They both write articles. They're the brains behind the John Birch Society. You know, we all have our talents. I still have yet to write my first article in the New American. I'm working on it though. I've been assigned to one, so I've got to write my first article. But we just need everybody to use their talents, whatever they can do to make it happen, and sign up so you actually know about these events before they happen and can share the word. But go to birchinar.com, birchinar.com. Last thing, If you have not joined the John Birch Society yet, make today the day you join the John Birch Society. I'd say most of the people that are attending this are members of the John Birch Society already. Go to jbs.org. In fact, better yet, call me after this is over with, because we are having some website issues. Call me at 864-804-0789, 864-804-0789. In fact, if you call Frank or Alex, they can get you signed up for the John Birch Society too. We have a digital application that makes it easy, which I can email to anybody. So if you want to get signed up for the John Birch Society today, call me right now and let's make it happen. Thanks, everybody. God bless you. Godspeed. Frank, we want to have you again. And same with you, Alex. You're our regular every Tuesday. So hopefully, let us know. Can you make it next Tuesday?
I can. I'll plan to be
Okay,
here.
Alex, we'll expect you back. Okay.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody, for watching. God bless you. Share the video. It's on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you.